Jaden was just 8 years old, but his heart was full of dreams bigger than the skies. Wearing his old jeans and a plain blue t-shirt, he walked down the busy street, tightly holding a few crumpled dollar bills in his small hand. His sneakers were worn out, but his spirit was bright. Today was special. Today was his mother's birthday. Jaden had saved his small allowance for months. Every time he wanted to buy candy or toys, he reminded himself, save it for Mom. His mother, Dr. Simone Carter, was everything to him. She worked long hours and never complained, always smiling for him. He wanted to show her how much he loved her. He finally stood in front of the big toy store. The windows sparkled with colorful toys, giant teddy bears, and race cars. Jaden's eyes widened with excitement. This was it. This was the place where he would find the perfect gift for the woman who meant the world to him. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the heavy glass door open. A bell above the door chimed softly as he entered. The inside of the store was even more magical. Bright shelves stacked high with toys, soft music playing, and the smell of fresh plastic and candy filling the air. Jaden forgot for a moment that he was nervous. He walked carefully through the aisles, his eyes shining. But not everyone was happy to see him. Behind the counter, standing stiff and proud, was Ms. Linda. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and a tight smile. As soon as she saw Jaden, her expression changed. She frowned slightly, then leaned over the counter to watch him closely. She whispered something to her coworker, who laughed quietly. Jaden didn't notice. His whole world was focused on finding the perfect gift. He stopped in front of a shelf filled with small jewelry boxes. Some had little music playing when opened. Jaden imagined his mother's smile, if she had something like that on her dresser. He picked up a pink box with tiny golden stars painted on it. It played a soft tune when he opened it. It was perfect. He clutched the jewelry box carefully and walked toward the counter, smiling shyly. His small hand tightened around his crumpled money. He couldn't wait to see his mother's face when she would open it. But he didn't get far. Just as Jaden reached halfway across the store, a sharp voice called out, "Hey, stop right there." Jaden froze, the box trembling slightly in his hands. He looked up, confused and scared. Ms. Linda was marching towards him, her face twisted with suspicion. She looked down at Jaden, as if he were something dirty she had found on the floor. "What are you doing with that?" she demanded loudly. Jaden's cheeks burned. He opened his mouth, but the words got stuck. All around, people in the store started turning their heads. Some stared, some whispered, I'm buying it. For my mom," Jaden said in a small voice, lifting his hand to show his few dollars. Ms. Linda snorted, folding her arms across her chest. "Sure you are. Where did you hide the other stuff you took? Show me your pockets now." Jaden's heart hammered against his chest. He looked down at his worn-out clothes, his small shoes. He hadn't taken anything. He didn't even think about stealing. All he wanted was to buy a gift. "I didn't steal anything," he whispered, feeling like he might cry. But Ms. Linda wasn't listening. She grabbed his arm roughly and dragged him toward the counter. The jewelry box dropped from his hands and clattered loudly on the floor. The shop became painfully silent. Other customers stared. Some shook their heads. Others just watched without saying a word. Jaden's eyes stung with tears, but he blinked them away. His mother always said, "Be brave, Jaden. Always stand tall, even when the world tries to push you down." He tried to stand tall now, but it was so hard when everyone was looking at him like he was a criminal. Ms. Linda pulled out her phone. "Maybe you need to explain yourself to the police," she said coldly. Jaden's body went cold. The police? For what? He hadn't done anything. His hands trembled. His knees felt weak. He wanted to run to hide, but he knew he couldn't. And just when things seemed they couldn't get worse, the store door opened again. A figure walked in, calm, powerful, and fierce. and she was looking straight at Jaden. The heavy door swung open with a soft chime. In walked a woman, tall, elegant, but with an air of quiet power around her. It was Dr. Simone Carter, Jaden's mother. She was dressed simply, jeans, a white shirt, and a small handbag over her shoulder. But there was something about her, the way she carried herself, that made people notice. Her eyes scanned the store quickly. She spotted Jaden immediately, her little boy standing near the counter, looking terrified, his tiny fists clenched, his shoulders shaking. Simone's heart dropped. Without wasting a second, she walked over. "Jaden?" Her voice was calm but firm. Jaden looked up, his face lighting up with a mixture of relief and fear. "Mom!" he cried out, running into her arms. Simone knelt down and hugged him tightly. She felt his body trembling. She rubbed his back gently, whispering, "I'm here, baby. I'm here." Ms. Linda stood behind the counter, arms crossed, watching them with a smug expression. Other customers were still standing around, some recording the scene on their phones, some whispering among themselves. Finally, Ms. Linda cleared her throat loudly. "Is this your child?" she asked in a sharp voice. Simone stood up slowly, facing her. Her eyes were calm, but there was a fire burning underneath. "Yes, he's my son," Simone replied. Ms. Linda shook her head, almost smiling. "Well, your son was caught trying to steal," she said loudly, so everyone could hear. "I had to stop him before he got away." The words hit Simone like a slap. She looked down at Jaden, who was clutching the few crumpled bills in his hand, tears still shining in his eyes. He had done nothing wrong. She knew it. She trusted her son. Simone turned back to Ms. Linda, her voice steady. "Did you see him steal something?" Ms. Linda looked taken aback for a second, but quickly recovered. "Well, he was acting suspicious. He picked up a jewelry box and—" "Picking up a product to buy is not stealing," Simone interrupted, her voice growing sharper. Ms. Linda flushed. Some customers murmured in agreement. "He had no business here," Ms. Linda said coldly, ignoring the whispers. "Clearly, he doesn't look like he can afford anything in this store." The word hung heavy in the air. Simone's face remained calm, but inside, she was furious. "Are you judging my son by the color of his skin? By his clothes?" Simone asked, her voice quiet but cutting. Ms. Linda looked uncomfortable now. No, of course not. But rules are rules," she said defensively. "What rules?" Simone pressed. "The rule where you assume an innocent child is a thief without proof." The store was now completely silent. All eyes were on them. The manager had come out from the back office, looking worried. Simone turned to him. "I want to see the security camera footage," she said simply. The manager hesitated. "I'm sure there's no need for—" "Now," Simone said sharply. Her voice left no room for argument. The manager nodded quickly and hurried to the back. Meanwhile, Ms. Linda shifted nervously behind the counter, her face turning red. Jaden looked up at his mother with wide eyes. He had never seen her like this before, calm, strong, and unshakable. It made him feel safer. It made him feel proud. Minutes later, the manager returned with a tablet in his hand. He pressed play. Everyone leaned in to watch. The footage was clear. Jaden walked into the store politely. He looked around, picked up the jewelry box carefully, admired it, and started walking towards the counter, without taking anything else. There was no stealing, no suspicious behavior, nothing. A wave of whispers and gasps swept through the store. Ms. Linda's mouth fell open slightly. She turned pale. The truth was now out for everyone to see. Simone didn't raise her voice. She didn't scream. She simply looked Ms. Linda straight in the eyes and said, "You owe my son an apology." Ms. Linda stammered, searching for words. The customers started speaking up now, loudly. "You should be ashamed. Poor kid. He did nothing wrong. I'm never shopping here again." The store's atmosphere shifted completely. Ms. Linda mumbled a weak, "I'm sorry," but it was too late. The damage had been done. Simone knelt down again and took Jaden's hand in hers. "Come on, sweetheart," she said gently. "Let's go buy you that gift for Mommy's birthday. Somewhere else." Together, they walked out of the store, heads held high. But deep inside Simone, a plan was already forming. This was not the end. This was only the beginning. Simone and Jaden walked out of the store into the bright sunlight. Jaden held tightly onto his mother's hand, still a little shaken but feeling much better with her beside him. They moved through the busy streets, passing other shops and people hurrying by. Simone kept her face calm, but inside her mind was working quickly. She could not, and would not, let what happened to Jaden be forgotten. This wasn't just about her son. It was about every child who had ever been treated unfairly because of how they looked. "Mom, am I bad?" Jaden asked suddenly, his small voice breaking the silence. Simone stopped walking and knelt down to look him in the eyes. "Listen to me, Jaden," she said firmly. "You are smart. You are kind. You are everything good in this world. Never let anyone make you feel small. They were wrong, not you." Jaden sniffled and nodded. Simone smiled gently and hugged him. "Now, how about that gift for Mommy's birthday?" she said, trying to lighten his mood. Jaden smiled too, a little one, but it was a start. They found another store, a smaller one, where the staff greeted them warmly. Jaden picked a beautiful music box with tiny golden stars on it. He counted his crumpled dollars carefully and paid by himself. The cashier smiled and even gave him a small discount when she heard it was for his mother's birthday. Jaden's face lit up with happiness. Simone watched him with pride, but her heart was still heavy. The memory of that awful moment in the first store stayed fresh in her mind. As they walked back to their car, Simone pulled out her phone. She made a few quick calls to people who knew her, who respected her. You see, Simone wasn't just any woman. She was a powerful civil rights attorney. She had fought, and won, cases far bigger than this. But this case was personal. Very personal. Meanwhile, back at the store, inside the toy store, the atmosphere was tense. Ms. Linda paced nervously behind the counter. The store manager looked worried as customers whispered among themselves, shaking their heads. "We're getting bad reviews online already," the assistant manager said, showing him her phone. "People are posting about what happened. Videos, comments, it's everywhere." The manager wiped sweat from his forehead. "Maybe it'll blow over," he said weakly. But deep down, he knew it wouldn't. Because the woman they had insulted wasn't just an ordinary shopper. She had resources, she had a voice, and she wasn't going to stay silent. That night, Simone sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open. Jaden was asleep upstairs, cuddling his new music box. Soft music played through the house, but Simone's mind was sharp and focused. She had already written a detailed letter to the toy store's headquarters. She attached copies of the security footage, which she had requested through a lawyer's letter. She demanded a public apology, a review of their staff training, and compensation for emotional damage caused to Jaden. She didn't ask. She demanded, because she knew her rights. And more importantly, she knew her power. Before sending the letter, she took a deep breath and looked at Jaden's picture on the wall, a photo from last year's school play where he had played a little astronaut. "This is for you, baby," she whispered. Then she pressed send. The next morning, the storm had already started. News stations were calling. Social media exploded with hashtags like #JusticeForJaden and #LetKidsDream. Thousands of people were sharing the story, expressing their anger and support. Parents, teachers, and even celebrities spoke up. Children should feel safe and welcome everywhere. This is why we must speak up against hidden racism. The toy store chain's CEO saw the crisis unfolding and immediately called for a meeting. "Fix this," he ordered. "I don't care how much it costs. Apologize. Offer settlements. Whatever it takes." But Simone wasn't looking for money. She was looking for change. And she wasn't stopping until she got it. The morning sun rose over the city, but inside the big office building of the toy store chain, the mood was dark. Emails flooded their customer service inbox. Phone lines rang nonstop with angry customers demanding answers. Videos from the store had gone viral overnight. Millions of people had now seen Jaden's sad face and heard about the way he had been treated. The CEO sat at the head of a large table, his face tight with stress. "We need to do damage control immediately," he said sharply. The PR manager nodded quickly. "We've drafted a public apology," she said, handing him a printed statement. The CEO scanned it, frowning. "Make it sound more emotional, more real," he ordered. "This woman, Simone, she's not someone we can ignore. She's already getting media attention. We can't afford a lawsuit." Everyone nodded. They knew they had made a terrible mistake, but they still didn't truly understand why it mattered. For them, it was just about saving the company's image. Meanwhile, at home, Simone sat at her kitchen table, her laptop open once again. Jaden was having breakfast, talking happily about his school project. Simone smiled at him, but her mind was busy. Her email chimed. It was a message from the toy store's corporate office. "We sincerely apologize for the unfortunate incident. We value all our customers and are taking steps to ensure this does not happen again." Simone read the words carefully. Cold, generic, empty. No mention of Jaden's name. No acceptance of real responsibility. No true remorse. She closed her laptop slowly and took a deep breath. This was not enough. Not for Jaden. Not for any child who would walk into that store after him. "Mommy, are you okay?" Jaden asked, his mouth full of cereal. Simone smiled gently. "I'm okay, baby. But I have some work to do." She kissed him on the forehead and got up from her chair. Today, she would make sure they truly listened. The protest begins. By noon, Simone stood outside the toy store with a small group of supporters. Friends, fellow parents, community leaders, all holding signs. "Let kids dream. Stop judging by skin. Respect every child." People passing by stopped to listen. Some joined the protest. Others took pictures and posted them online. Within an hour, news crews arrived. A reporter pushed a microphone toward Simone. "Miss Simone, what do you hope to achieve with this protest?" Simone stood tall. "I want the world to understand," she said clearly, her voice strong. "Children deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, no matter what they look like. We are not just asking for an apology. We are asking for real change. For training, for education, for action, so that no child ever feels less than they are." The crowd clapped and cheered. Jaden watched proudly from the side, holding a small sign that said, "I am enough." Inside the toy store, Ms. Linda watched the protest from the store window, her stomach in knots. She hadn't slept much the night before. The looks from her coworkers were cold. The manager barely spoke to her. She was scared. Scared of losing her job. Scared of being called a racist. "I didn't mean it," she mumbled to herself. "I was just doing my job." But deep down she knew. She knew she had judged that sweet little boy before he even spoke. Because of his skin. Because of his clothes. And now, the whole world knew too. The store manager came up behind her. "Head office wants to speak with you," he said, his voice flat. Ms. Linda nodded, her heart pounding. She knew her time was running out. Simone's big move. That evening, Simone stood on a stage at a community center. Parents, teachers, business owners, and even city officials had gathered to listen. Simone shared Jaden's story. She spoke not with anger, but with hope. Hope for a world where children would be judged by their dreams, not their appearance. She announced the start of a new program. "See the child, not the color." a campaign focused on training businesses to treat all customers with equal respect. The crowd rose to its feet, cheering and clapping. Jaden clapped the loudest, his little face glowing with pride. Simone wiped a tear from her eye. This wasn't just about fighting back. This was about building a better world, one where kids like Jaden could walk proudly, dream freely, and believe that they were truly enough. The next morning, the city buzzed with talk about Simone's protest. News stations replayed her speech. Social media was full of photos of little Jaden holding his sign. People shared their own experiences, stories of being judged, stories of being treated unfairly because of how they looked. The truth was coming out, not just about one toy store, but about the way so many people were treated every day. Inside the toy store's headquarters, the boardroom at the toy store's main office was tense. Executives sat around the table, their faces serious. In front of them were thick reports, graphs showing falling sales, customer complaints, and growing public anger. "This is a disaster," one executive said, rubbing his forehead. "We need to fix this before it destroys our brand." "We tried apologizing," another said. "It wasn't enough," the CEO said firmly. There was a long silence. Finally, the CEO stood up. "I've made a decision. We're going to meet with Simone, face to face. We will listen to her demands and make real changes." Some executives shifted uncomfortably. Not all of them agreed, but they had no choice. The world was watching. The invitation. At home, Simone received a formal letter. It wasn't like the cold apology email. This time, the letter was handwritten, personal. "We would be honored if you would meet with us to discuss how we can do better," it said. Simone read the letter carefully. Then she looked at Jaden, who was playing with his toys on the floor. She thought about the future, not just for Jaden, but for every child who deserved better. Slowly, she smiled. "All right," she said softly. "Let's see if they really mean it." The meeting. Simone arrived at the company headquarters the next afternoon. She wore a simple but powerful outfit, a smart blue dress, comfortable shoes, and a silver necklace Jaden had given her. As she entered the large glass building, all eyes turned to her. Some whispered. Some stared. Some looked away in shame. The CEO himself came to greet her. "Ms. Simone, thank you for coming," he said, extending his hand. Simone shook it firmly. They walked into a private conference room. Inside were the company's top leaders, men and women who were used to making decisions behind closed doors. Today, they would listen. Simone sat down, calm and confident. "Before we begin," she said, her voice steady, "I want to make one thing clear. This is not about just fixing one mistake. This is about changing your culture." There was a heavy silence. The CEO nodded. "We are ready to listen," he said. "Simone's conditions." Simone pulled out a list from her handbag. "First, you must train every employee, from the cashiers to the executives, on racial bias and respectful customer service." Heads nodded. "Second, you must create a scholarship fund for underprivileged children. Let's invest in their futures instead of judging their present." More nods, some surprised. "Third, you must publicly acknowledge what happened. No hiding, no sugarcoating." Some executives looked uncomfortable, but Simone didn't stop. "Finally, you must hire more diverse leaders within your company. People who understand, people who represent all your customers." She sat back and waited. The room was quiet. The CEO looked around at his team. He knew the company's survival depended on their answer. "Agreed," he said finally. Simone nodded, satisfied. But inside, she knew the real work was just beginning. A small victory. When Simone stepped outside after the meeting, reporters were waiting. "Ms. Simone, did they agree to your terms?" one shouted. Simone smiled softly. "They agreed, but actions speak louder than words. We will be watching." Jaden ran up to her, hugging her tightly. "Did you win, Mommy?" he asked. She knelt down and kissed his forehead. "We took the first step, baby," she whispered. "And sometimes, that's the bravest thing you can do." The cameras flashed. The world watched, and somewhere deep inside, hope grew stronger. Because one simple boy and his powerful mother had dared to stand up, and the world had listened. The news about Simone's brave actions spread faster than anyone expected. Newspapers, TV channels, and social media platforms were all talking about it. Everywhere people looked, there were headlines like, "Mother stands up against injustice at toy store." "A child's kindness brings a company to its knees." Simone and Jaden had become symbols, not just for one small fight, but for hope, courage, and change. Support from strangers, all over the city, and even from other countries. People started sending letters, emails, and gifts. "Thank you for standing up for what's right," one letter said. "You are making the world better for all our children," said another. A famous children's author sent Jaden a signed set of books. A toy company offered to make a special edition toy named after him, Jaden the Brave. Neighbors who had never even spoken to Simone before now waved warmly when they saw her on the street. Children in his school pointed at Jaden and whispered with awe, "That's him. That's the boy from the news." Jaden felt shy, but Simone made sure he stayed humble. "Remember, baby," she told him, "it's not about fame. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard." Jaden nodded seriously. He understood. Ms. Linda's regret. Meanwhile, back at the toy store, things were not going so well for Miss Linda. After the protest, many customers refused to shop there. Parents organized online boycotts. People stood outside the store with signs that said, "Respect all customers," and "Justice for Jaden." The store manager called Ms. Linda into his office one afternoon. "Linda, we've had too many complaints," he said, looking uncomfortable. "We have no choice. We're letting you go." Ms. Linda tried to argue, but deep down, she knew it was useless. Her actions had consequences. As she packed up her things, she felt a heavy sadness. She realized something important that day. Prejudice not only hurts others, it destroys your own future too. A special event. A week later, Simone received another invitation, this time from the mayor of the city. "We would be honored if you and Jaden could attend a special ceremony," it said. When the day arrived, the city hall was packed. There were children, parents, reporters, and officials. The mayor stood at the podium and said, "Today we honor a mother who refused to stay silent, and a young boy who showed the world the true meaning of courage." He called Simone and Jaden up to the stage. As they stood there, the mayor handed them a golden plaque. It read, "In recognition of bravery, kindness, and the fight for justice, Simone and Jaden, heroes of our city." The crowd stood up and clapped, loud, proud, and full of hope. Tears filled Simone's eyes, not because of the award, but because she knew her son's innocence had stayed pure, even in the face of hate. New beginnings. Life slowly started to change after that. The toy store, after meeting Simone's conditions, launched a scholarship program called the Jaden Fund to help underprivileged children. They also promised that no child would ever be treated unfairly again in their stores. Simone was offered a seat on the company's new Customer Rights Board, where she could directly advise them on fairness and equality. At first, she hesitated. She didn't want to work with people who had once hurt her son. But then she remembered something important. Change doesn't happen from the outside. Real change comes when we step inside and do the hard work. So she accepted, not for herself, for Jaden, for all the children who needed someone to speak up for them. Jaden's dream. One evening, as they sat together on their front porch, Jaden leaned against his mother. The stars were twinkling above them. "Mommy," he said softly, "when I grow up, I want to help people too. Just like you." Simone hugged him tightly. "You already are, baby," she whispered. "You already are." And under the wide, endless sky, a small boy with a big heart dreamed of a world where kindness and justice would always win. Because once upon a time, he had seen with his own eyes that even the smallest voice can change the world. The story of Simone and Jaden touched hearts everywhere, but it also planted something deeper, a lesson that began to grow slowly across the whole city. Schools take notice. Soon, many schools started talking about what happened to Jaden. Teachers realized that they had an important role, not just to teach reading and math, but also to teach kindness, respect, and fairness. One afternoon at Jaden's school, Principal Harris called a special assembly. Hundreds of students sat cross-legged on the gym floor. The principal stood in front of them, holding a small photo. It was Jaden, smiling shyly. "Today," he began, "we are going to talk about something more important than any textbook." He spoke about standing up for what is right. He talked about judging people not by their clothes, their skin color, or how much money they had, but by their hearts. Then he pointed to Jaden in the crowd. "Jaden showed more bravery than most adults," Principal Harris said warmly. "He reminded us all of something we must never forget." The whole school clapped, and Jaden turned red with shyness. But deep down, he felt proud. He had started something bigger than he ever imagined, the shop's new look. Meanwhile, the toy store that once mistreated Jaden had undergone a big transformation. Gone were the old cold looks and suspicious glares. Now, the staff were trained to treat every customer with kindness and respect. There were colorful posters on the walls that said, "Every dream matters. All are welcome here." Children of all colors, backgrounds, and families came in happily, without fear, without judgment. Simone sometimes passed by the store and smiled. She didn't need to shop there anymore, but she was proud to know that change had come, even if it had started painfully. Ms. Linda, who once treated Jaden so badly, now volunteered at community centers, teaching about kindness and equality. She had learned her lesson the hard way, but she was trying to make things right. A new friend. One Saturday, Jaden was sitting in the park, reading one of his new books. A small boy walked up to him, hesitating. Are you Jaden?" the boy asked nervously. Jaden nodded. "My name is Ben," the boy said, holding out his hand. "I saw you on TV. You're really brave." Jaden smiled and shook Ben's hand. They sat together, talking about toys, books, and dreams. Ben, who once felt scared because he was different too, now felt stronger, because he knew there were kids like Jaden who made the world a little kinder. Friendship blossomed between them, simple and pure. Sometimes one act of courage can light up many lives, just like a small candle lighting hundreds more. Simone's bigger mission. Simone was not done yet. She realized that there were many other mothers, fathers, and children who needed help, people who were still being judged unfairly. So she decided to start a small organization, Voices of Hope. It was a group that worked to make stores, schools, and public places safer and fairer for everyone. Simone worked long hours, organizing meetings, talking to business owners, visiting schools, and creating new programs. She faced many challenges. Not everyone liked change. But whenever she felt tired, she thought of Jaden's small hand in hers. She thought of that day in the toy store, and she found the strength to keep going. A message that travels far. One day, Simone received a letter from a faraway country. It was from a teacher who had read about her story online. "Because of you," the letter said, "our school has started teaching classes on kindness and respect. Children here are learning that every person matters, no matter where they come from or what they look like." Simone held the letter close to her heart. Tears filled her eyes, but they were happy tears. A single moment, a single choice to stand up for her son, had created waves of hope all across the world. Jaden's promise. That night, as Simone tucked Jaden into bed, he looked up at her with wide, wise eyes. "Mommy," he whispered, "I promise, when I grow up, I'll help even more people. I'll make you proud." Simone smiled, brushing his curls away from his forehead. "You already make me proud every single day, my little hero," she whispered back. And as Jaden drifted off to sleep, dreaming of big dreams and bigger futures, Simone sat by the window, looking up at the stars, feeling a peace she had not felt in a long time. Because she knew now, no matter how dark the world could seem sometimes, there would always be light, especially when brave hearts like Jaden's kept shining. The days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. But the memory of that one painful day, and the powerful change that followed, stayed alive. Jaden's small action had started something much bigger than anyone could have imagined. A special invitation. One sunny morning, as Jaden and Simone were having breakfast, the doorbell rang. Standing outside was a tall man in a neat suit, holding a golden envelope. "Good morning," he said politely. "Is this the home of Jaden Carter?" Simone exchanged a surprised look with Jaden, then nodded. The man smiled and handed them the envelope. "You've been invited," he said, "to a very special event." Inside the envelope was a letter, written by the mayor of the city himself. Jaden had been chosen to receive the Young Hero Award for his bravery, kindness, and inspiring the whole community to be better. The ceremony would be in City Hall, with hundreds of important people attending. Jaden's hands shook as he held the letter. He wasn't used to being the center of attention. "Mom, I don't know if I can do it," he whispered nervously. Simone knelt down, looking into his eyes. "You've already done the hardest part, baby," she said softly. "You stood up when it mattered most. Now it's time for the world to see the wonderful boy you are." Jaden took a deep breath and nodded. He was ready. A night to remember. City Hall was decorated beautifully that night. Golden lights twinkled. Families, teachers, police officers, and even store owners filled the grand hall. At the front, a big stage stood waiting. When Jaden's name was called, the crowd clapped loudly. Jaden walked up, wearing a small black suit and shiny shoes. He looked tiny on the big stage, but in that moment, he felt like a giant inside. The mayor shook his hand warmly and handed him a shining gold medal. "Tonight, we honor a boy who reminded us all what real courage looks like," the mayor said. "Jaden Carter showed us that no one should be judged by their clothes, their money, or their skin. He showed us that every person deserves respect." The audience stood and clapped again, even louder. Simone, standing with tears in her eyes, watched her son shine like a true star. The ripple effect. Jaden's story didn't stop at City Hall. News stations covered the award ceremony. Newspapers printed headlines. "Young boy sparks big change in the city. Kindness and courage win the day." Other cities heard the story too. Soon, Jaden and Simone were invited to speak at schools and events. Everywhere they went, people listened. They weren't just hearing about a little boy in a toy store. They were learning about standing up for what's right, about fighting prejudice, and about believing in the goodness inside people. And Jaden, who once felt shy and small, found his voice. He spoke simply but powerfully. "Everyone matters," he would say. "Everyone deserves kindness. No one should be made to feel less than they are." Ms. Linda's apology. One day after a school event, a familiar face approached Jaden. It was Ms. Linda, the shopkeeper who had once humiliated him. But she looked different now. Her face was softer, her eyes full of regret. "Jaden," she said quietly, "I am so sorry for how I treated you. I was wrong. I was unfair. You taught me to be better, and I will never forget that." Jaden looked at her, then at his mother. Simone gave a small nod. Jaden smiled and shook Ms. Linda's hand. "Thank you for saying sorry," he said kindly. "I forgive you." It wasn't easy, but Jaden understood something many adults didn't. Forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It was about freeing your heart to move forward. A promise for the future. On Jaden's 9th birthday, his family threw a small party. There were balloons, cake, laughter, but also something very special. Simone handed him a gift, a small journal. On the first page, she had written, "Your dreams are bigger than this world can see. Keep shining, my brave boy." Jaden hugged his mother tightly. That night, he opened the journal and wrote, "One day, I will help kids who feel small and afraid. I will build a world where every child knows they matter." He closed the journal with a smile. It wasn't just a dream anymore. It was a promise. The light that never fades. And so, Jaden's journey continued. There would still be hard days. There would still be unfairness and people who judged others wrongly. But now there was also hope, burning brighter than ever before. Because sometimes all it takes is one small voice, one small act of bravery to light a fire of change. Jaden was that light, and he would never stop shining. Not for anything. Not for anyone. Not ever.